Hi, I'm Amanda and I should probably be reading, so that's exactly what I'm going to do today in a vlog. Welcome back to my channel. I am doing a vlog today because I wanted to get some reading done and I thought recording it might help me stay motivated. So it is nearing the end of January. There are only a few days left in the month. As of yesterday, I had only read 2 books. One was a pretty big book that I was happy to get through, and one was a book I didn't end up enjoying. So last night my husband recommended I pick up Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. I finished it fairly quickly. It's a short little graphic novel, and I thought, hey, why not speed run a bunch of the shorter things on my TBR, just read a lot of them to try to get my January numbers up. There's nothing magical about the month of January, but it is the start of the year. We set all our goals. We start a new calendar. So I don't want to look back at the month of January for the rest of the year and have it sit at 2, now 3 books. I want to try to up those numbers a bit just so that I can feel a little bit prouder of my accomplishment in the month. I was sick for a lot of the month and reading felt awful to my brain. So that was an unfortunate bit where I just didn't feel like reading for a couple weeks. But I'm better now, even though I'm still a little stuffed up. I've got 17 things in front of me that range from graphic novels to manga to 2 short books. One I think is a middle grade and the other is a novella and an art book. I'm going to try to pick something out really fast, and if I can't pick something out quickly, I'm going to put in a random number generator and just count from one side to the other, and that's the thing I'm going to read next. I did that at the end of the year when I was trying to get through a bunch of my manga. I just put it all in a pile, asked Siri to give me a number, and I read whatever it told me to, and that was a nice way to take that analysis paralysis out of deciding what to read next. Hopefully we can knock out a good number of books in the next couple days. I'll probably go all the way to the end of the month. We'll see what we do, how we do. Hoping we can get to double digits. Don't think that's impossible. We'll see how well we do. So quickly I'll update you on this since this is the thing that started my thought. This was a comic called Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. It is Animal Crossing meets Hannibal or Dexter, I guess. I never watched Dexter, so I don't know how apt the comparison is, but it's serial killer animals. The setting reminds me a lot of like an Animal Crossing type world where you've got all these animals living together in harmony. You don't have any of the like predator versus prey division like you had in Zootopia necessarily, and everyone is about the same size. Some of the creatures do seem a little bit smaller, but not on the stage of like mice being tiny and giraffes towering above everyone. A giraffe is just maybe like a couple inches taller than like a brown bear. So this is the story of Samantha, who is a psychopath. She kills people, as you can see here on the cover. And she has one rule. She has a couple rules. But one of her rules is not to ever bring that to her village. She lives in a small town, and one of her rules is basically don't murder the locals. Leave them alone. Do not bring this part of who she is home with her. And this isn't a spoiler. It's in the first issue of the comic, and it's on the back. Another serial killer appears in her small town, and she has to try to deal with this. Because, one, she wants her small town to stay like it is in this nice bubble of everyone being friendly and loving each other. And even though she doesn't really get those feelings, she can't really understand what they're feeling. She likes the bubble she has set up in her town. She likes the way it is. She likes the balance of it. And also because she's a bit worried that if people are investigating a serial killer, it wouldn't be too hard for them to stumble across the wrong serial killer and think she's responsible for these new murders in her town. I think I'm going to give it a 4-star. It was good. It just wasn't anything that blew my mind. When my husband was describing this to me, he was like, "Did you watch Dexter?" And I was like, "No." And he said, "Did Hannibal ever have a time where he had to like go up against another serial killer?" And I was like, "Yeah." And that really did make me think, okay, yeah, this is things you've seen before if you've consumed a lot of serial killer based media. This is something you might have seen before, but it does enough differently to make it worth a read. It's just, I think where it suffers for me is if you watch a show like Hannibal, again, I haven't watched Dexter, so I can't fully weigh in on that, but I really like long form storytelling where you have a lot of build up. You have 26 hours in some cases, if you have like a season of a TV show, to really build up this conflict and to have little battles between the two and wins and losses. And then things from the very beginning maybe come back and you have a lot more time to have this really satisfying ending that really feels earned and tied up. This only has 6 issues to tell a story, and while it does a good job, in order to have a few false starts and in order to not have her solve the mystery immediately, we do have to kind of rush through some of the conflict with the other serial killer. So it is good. It is just not the best version of this type of story I've seen. Still worth checking out if you want to see the interesting dissonance of having cute animals that live together and also horrible things are happening to them. Okay, so now I have to choose what I'm reading next. I think I'm going to start with Something is Killing the Children 8. This is the only volume of the series we have that I haven't read, and it's one of the few things in my stacks that are not things I bought last year. But I do want to get this read, and I really like this series, and it jumped out at me on the shelf, so we're going to start with that, with what I'm really excited about, to hopefully ride that excitement into the next stuff. So I'll check back in with you after I've read this and when I'm picking up what's next and let you know how it's going. I loved this. It was great. 5 stars. This volume is kind of a standalone backstory volume. The volume 7 wrapped up a 3-volume story arc we'd had going on. So this one is a bunch, each chapter, so each individual comic was just like a one-shot. Like, all of these stories are set before volume 1 of the comic. And I loved everything about it. It manages to tell stories about a Buffy-like character taking out monsters every week in very unique ways. It manages to highlight very different things about the way she's fighting these monsters, or more importantly at this point, the impact it's having on Erica. And I just loved everything about it. We got a lot of Aaron in this volume. I love Aaron. I love Erica and Aaron interacting and their banter and their sibling relationship. I love it. I really liked the last chapter of this and the one that was set in the therapy session. They were both just outstanding. There's not a lot I can say about this since it is volume 8 of an ongoing series, but this is excellent. I would definitely recommend Something is Killing the Children for anyone who is a fan of horror. Be aware if you're newer to horror or have some triggers around horror, this is a series where bad things do happen to children on page fairly graphically. So if that's something you're uncomfortable with, this might not be the series for you, but this is a series that doesn't pull punches and I really enjoy it. So it's a winner. Now I have to pick what I'm reading next. Pick a number between 1 and 16.
A random number between 1 and 16 is 7.
7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The Endless Storybook. And I might go ahead, after this one, I might go ahead and pick up Delirium's Party. I don't think these are like directly before or after each other. I'm going to double check before I start. I just think they're 2 stories that she wrote. But I'm going to double check. I'm going to get these read and I will see you soon. Alright, I have finished The Little Endless Storybook and Delirium's Party, and these were really cute. These are short little storybooks. They're written with prose, with full color illustrations, watercolor illustrations, usual Jill Thompson style. The Little Endless Storybook is about how Delirium gets lost and her dog Barnabas is trying to find her. He visits each of the Endless siblings while trying to find her and visits all their realms. So we kind of get to see them one at a time to get introduced to the siblings. And then in Delirium's Party, we get to see them interact a bit as Delirium decides she wants to hold a party to make Despair smile. And so she holds a surprise party for her sister. These were cute. They're lovely. They're just little storybooks. I don't know a lot about the Sandman characters. I think I've only read maybe the first volume, if that, and if I did, it was ages ago, to where I am aware of it, but don't really know. I know a little bit, and I know the characters. I knew the characters existed, but it was really cute seeing them in this cute, childlike form, how they're all so tiny and cute. I would consider reading these with my kids. They're cute and fun, and use fun language, because Delirium is kind of crazy. She likes things twinkly and sparkly and twirly. So they were cute. They were fun. I will probably give them 4s, but they feel like a lower 4 to me. Like, I'm glad I read them. They're very cute. I'll want to keep them in my collection. But they're not ones that I would necessarily recommend widely. If you already know a bit about the Sandman universe, or you think these characters sound interesting, I would pick these up. But they're hard to recommend if you know nothing about the property at all. I don't know, unless you just like really cute kitty stories, you would enjoy these. But I don't know, they seem kind of hard to recommend in general. All right, let's see what I'm reading next. Give me a random number between 1 and 14.
A random number between 1 and 14 is 4.
4. That means the Moth Keeper is next. I don't remember anything about this. I bought it because I liked the art. And I don't know much about the story or what it's about, so we'll be surprised together. I'll check back in with you when I've made some progress or finished this one. Hello, it is a new day. I got about halfway through the Moth Keeper last night, and I tried to do an update before I went to bed, and the camera died. So it was a sign to finish up and go to bed anyway, so I made the right choice. But I'm about probably a little more than halfway through the Moth Keeper. I think I've got about 75 pages till the end. So now I can actually tell you what this is about and why I knew this author. This is the author who did the Tea Dragon Society, which I have all 3 volumes of, but I don't think I ever read the 3rd volume. I did that thing where you buy a series and you read the first one, so you buy the second one, and when you get the second one, you read it. And then when you get the 3rd, you go, I should reread the first 2 before I reread this last one. And then you never do. Just me? I don't know. But, so it's been sitting on my shelf unread. And I really love the tea dragons. They're so cute. I love tea, I love dragons. It's perfect for me. And this is by the same author. So, after I decided to go to bed, I also pulled out, you can't really see, but this massive pile of books. I went ahead and pulled out the whole Tea Dragon Society trilogy to add to my random number generator pile of possibilities for my speedrunning books at the end of the month. And in fact, I might just pick up the Tea Dragon books once I finish this. I'll have to see if I want to do random number, if I just want to jump into that, because I'm enjoying this so much. But what is the Moth Keeper, you may ask, and also I asked when I started it because I did not remember. This is a story about a young girl named Aya who has decided to become the titular Moth Keeper for her people. She lives in a town, it's called the Night Town. It's fully functional at night. The lore is that these people decided to forsake the sun in favor of the moon spirit, and so everything they do is at night. And because they decided to basically pledge allegiance to the moon spirit graced them with these moon moths. And the Moon Keeper is responsible for being in charge of the moon moths to make sure they don't get lost, to make sure they stay fed, and that the magic in them stays alive, because if they stay in their little house too long, like their magic dims, so you've got to take them out and let them live, because magic is a living thing. And the night moths are responsible for pollinating this special tree that has a flower called the night flower. And it's very important that the night flower gets pollinated, because it is magical pollen that really helps this town to thrive. And apparently the whole ecosystem too. So, the problem with being the Moth Keeper is that you are out in the desert by yourself, away from everyone else in the town. And so Anya has a mentor at the beginning of the book who she is taking over for. So at the beginning, she's out with him and he's teaching her the ropes and showing her what to do. And as she gets more and more accustomed to it, he lets her do it by herself. And we're told that Anya is used to being alone, that she doesn't seem to have a lot of close connections in the village. But she still seems kind of sad and to be out by herself. It seems like a very lonely job. So apparently not a lot of people will volunteer for it, which the obvious solution seems to be if there were more moth keepers, no one person would have to be out for too long. If there were 7 moth keepers, one could go out once a week and do other things during the rest of the week, and then no one person would have to be alone all the time. But whatever. So, easy solutions aside, this is the way their society runs. So we have learned more as we've gone through the fact that there is another town of people who are out during the day. There are people who live in this desert who are still more traditionally, I guess, aligned with the sun. They wake up when the sun comes up and go to bed when it goes down, whereas this town wakes up when the sun is setting and goes to bed as the sun is rising. And Anya feels conflicted because as we learn more about her, we learn that she's kind of scared of the dark. She doesn't feel at home in it, and she sort of longs to see what it's like during the day. She longs to see flowers in full bloom instead of budded up at night. But she also wants to be a light for her people. She wants to be able to give back and to fill this important role for them. So we're seeing these conflicting things. It's very well done. The illustrations are beautiful. I love Kay O'Neill's artwork. I'm very much enjoying it. We'll have to see how everything comes to a head in the end of the story. I have not told you the big cliffhanger ending I left off on where something horrible has happened, but I won't tell you what because you need to read the story. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I'm going to finish this up and I'll give you my final thoughts in a minute. I have finished The Moth Keeper and I really liked it. I think I'm going to give this one a 5-star. The story did not go in the way I thought it was going to go at the beginning of the book. I really liked a lot of the world building and the characters in here. For part of the world building, as an example, there's a character that's an albino who was born in the daytime village. But because it was so hard for him being out in the harsh sun, he had to hide in the shade because the sun's rays were so difficult for him. His parents brought him to the night village, and because these two towns are basically different worlds, he mentions that he hasn't seen his parents in a while, and it's clear that he has some conflicting feelings about that this was probably what was best for him, and he's built a wonderful life in the night village, but it's also clearly very difficult when you were basically abandoned here because once they left him here, they couldn't come visit very often because their world runs on a completely different cycle. So that was very interesting. There's some good disability rep in here. There's LGBTQ rep. It's just so cute that you've got like characters that are like fox people and owl people. And then you have people who look more like just elves with pointy ears. Then you have like full on centaurs in here. So it's got a very diverse cast. And it's just very sweet and very interesting. Magic is very real. And it sets up this very interesting world and how these characters are trying to survive in it. Living at night is very hard because a lot of things aren't accessible to these people. They don't see a lot of insect life, for example, except for the titular moths. They have a hard time finding different things that you might have an easier time finding during the day. I really liked Anya. She was a very interesting protagonist. It was fun to watch her grow, and I like this one a lot. This was fun. I would recommend this one. I'm also so impressed. I'm always impressed in graphic novels with how a storyteller is able to tell a good bit of story without words. The chapter I started today, for a good number of pages, just didn't have any words on it. There's probably words being spoken by characters, but everything is expressed to the reader just through the expressions on the characters' faces and the way they're looking at each other, and it's very effective, more effective than I think clunky dialogue telling you things you already know would be. It's much more engaging as storytelling to see how these characters are reacting to something that we as the audience already know what occurred. We don't need to hear about it again as it's explained to other people. It's much more impactful to see their reactions. There was a very interesting part that I really liked. There's a teacher character who is teaching he's a healer, and he's teaching his apprentice how to make some kind of balm or salve. And she asked him, she says, "I think it's ready. What do you think?" And he comes over and he says, "Would you feel confident giving this to your first patient?" And she kind of hesitates and goes, "Maybe not." And he says, "Well, that's a shame, because it's as good as anything the rest of us would make." And I really thought this was going to be some sort of like a you have to have confidence in yourself type of lesson. Like the lesson here was going to be you need to be more confident. You need to stop doubting yourself. But it wasn't. It was much deeper than that. He said, this is as good as any of us could make, but we all doubt our own abilities sometimes. We all have days where we're not sure of the ratios of ingredients, where we doubt our skills. And it is never, no matter how much learning you have, it is always wise to ask for help. And I thought that was so nice. Like, what a nice lesson. And I was worried when I was like, oh no, what kind of a teacher-student interaction is this going to be? Like, is he going to be mean and rude? And are you going to feel bad for this adorable bunny rabbit character? But no, he was very kind, and the lesson was very sweet. And I just loved that idea of asking for help, and that asking for help is okay, no matter how much you've done. Because I've felt like that at certain jobs I've had, where there have been days where I don't know that my brain is working, or I've been staring at a project for so long that I can no longer tell its quality or if it includes the things it needs to include. So I always like to ask another set of eyes to just take a look at it. And I feel like at some points I've gotten pushback for that, where it's been like, oh, don't waste my time. I'm sure it's fine. Or you should know how to do this. You don't need me to look over it. It's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's right, but this is important. So I would like another set of eyes just to make sure I'm not missing something major. So I think it's so nice, this idea of asking for help, and that knowing things doesn't mean you can't ask for help. I just really like that. I thought that was just a really sweet lesson. And it's like 2 pages in here. That isn't a deeper theme. Well, it might be. There's some characterization stuff in there, but it isn't one of the major themes of the work. Like the end conflicts are not resolved by asking for help necessarily. Not because, well, I wouldn't consider it one of the major themes, but it is such a sweet interaction, and really, I feel sets up that character as a very giving teacher and a very understanding person. And I just love that idea. So yeah, I really like this one, and I think, am I going to pick up T-Dragon next? Or am I going to let it roll the dice? I think I'm going to let it roll the dice. I don't want to plow through a bunch of books by the same author and get stalled partway through, especially since T-Dragon is 3 books. I don't want to stall partway through book 2 and not want to continue. So I think I'm going to let the random number generator take it from here. I have 19 books now. I added some to the stack last night after I read some. So yesterday I read 3.5 books. So let's see how good we do today.
A random number between 1 and 19 is 13.
13. Oh, goodness, okay. So 13 was Sakura Hime number 2, so I'm going to read Sakura Hime number 1, and hopefully go right into this one. This is a little shoujo series I picked up on super deep discount at a sale at our local comic book shop, and I want to read more shoujo, and I thought I'd check it out. So I'll let you know if it was worth the $5 I think I paid for these 2 volumes in just a second. And now, with the magic of filming, I have finished Sakura Hime Volume 1 and 2. And This was not what I thought it would be. The back is very vague and just sort of mentions that Sakura has been told not to look up at the full moon and never been told why. And then she does that. The back also begins with notes about her lineage, which she doesn't learn until after she does end up staring at the moon. There's nothing about her arranged marriage or the Japanese legend that this is all based on. But it started out with Sakura being like, wait, I don't want to get married. It was very strange because none of that was telegraphed on the back to tell me that's what this is about. Obviously, it's a shoujo story. That means it's going to be primarily about romance. But what this ended up being was kind of like a Sailor Moon type story. Her symbol is 2 crescent moons. She even has a "in the name of the moon I will punish you" like catchphrase. Sakura descends. There is no escaping the moon's divine retribution. So yeah, she has a "in the name of the moon I will punish you." So this is very clearly like inspired by a Sailor Moon type story. I'm holding this backwards. Except this is in the Heian period of Japanese history. So you have historical clothing, historical setting. Instead of Sailor Moon being the basically I think she's the reincarnation of the Moon Princess. She is the Sakura. Keep holding this up backwards. Sakura is the descendant of Kaguya Hime, who is a character from Japanese legend. She is found by a woodcutter from a piece of bamboo and ended up returning to the moon where she was from. There's a lot more to the legend and there's various versions of it, but that's the really short version. So in this, she is a descendant of Princess Kaguya, and Princess Kaguya was brought down to basically fight demons. And the demons, it seems, are like convicts from the moon that they send down to Earth and then also send down someone to deal with it. I don't know. Sounds really complicated. So on top of this, hey, you're a child of destiny who has to fight. You are the only one who can fight these monsters because you are the only one who can control this weapon that has been passed down through your bloodline. You are the only one who can control that weapon, and so you are the only one who can fight. So we have a historical setting. We have a young girl. We have her betrothed who she's never met. She's been betrothed since birth to the son of the emperor, and she's never met him and has been really lonely her whole life. And at the beginning of the manga, she is summoned to go to the capital and get married. And she doesn't want to do that. She has a lot of themes of this book are about fate. And do you have to follow your fate or can you make your own decisions? And so she is battling not only being a descendant of the Moon Princess, which means she is also immortal and not entirely human. So she has some things in common with the monster she's trying to fight. And that does mean some humans view her differently. One part of the world building I really liked is she has enhanced healing abilities. But in order to where she can heal from a nearly mortal wound in a fairly short period of time, she feels several thousand times more pain than a human, which is intense. Like, I have a fairly high pain tolerance, but I can't imagine having to endure several thousand times more pain. Holy cow. So I thought that was an interesting little bit of world building just to give her kind of some trauma, I guess. But yeah, this was not quite what I was expecting. I didn't realize she would be the one fighting all the demons. I didn't realize she would be the only one capable of fighting the demons. I wasn't expecting her to be this lone female warrior with also this complicated attraction and relationship with her betrothed, because again, this is a shoujo. It is to appeal to young girls, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I do somewhat dread trying to track these down, as I believe these printings, and they were the third printing, were from 2014, so I'm dealing with a 10-year-old manga potentially. I have no idea if these are still in print, and I can even find them anywhere. So I believe there are 12 volumes to this manga. One thing I feel like is more common maybe in shoujo manga, or maybe it's just not as common anymore, and it was a thing with older manga, is there's a lot of notes from the author in the margins. And I know other series I've read have done that, but I feel like I haven't seen one in a while that's done that. So there's all these notes about her challenges and the things about when she was creating characters and who is like the favorite character in the manga right now and who isn't really getting the fans on board, which is really interesting and really funny. This clearly was popular in Japan. It was popular enough to make it 12 volumes. But I don't remember ever hearing anything about this series. But again, I don't really have my finger on the pulse of shoujo. So it could have been very big in circles I just wasn't a part of. So I'm going to have to figure out if I can find any more volumes of these and not pay a ton of money for them. I'm not dying to get the next volume, but it is one I'd like to pursue, and I'd like it to not linger on my shelf as 2 volumes I read and then never continue the series, as a number of series on my shelf have unfortunately lingered that way. So we'll have to see. I'm interested. I very much enjoyed these. I'm glad I sat down and read them. No buyer's remorse for the $5 I paid for these 2 volumes total. If only they'd had the other 10. I'm glad I sat down and actually read these. This is one that could have lingered on my shelf for a really long time. So I'm glad I sat down, threw these on this giant pile behind me, and was told by a random number generator to read them. So I'm glad I read them. It wasn't my absolute favorite. There are different romance tropes I like more than others. And this one seems to have a lot of... I don't even know that miscommunication is the right thing. I feel like they both know the other one likes them, but they're both convinced, oh, the other person can't possibly love me because they hate me. And it just feels, if they just sit down and talk once, all of this would be resolved. But so it is with many romance stories. But I liked it. Like I said, I'm kind of on the bubble between a 3 and a 4, just because I don't think this is one I'm like, oh, you have to read, it's great. It was good. I enjoyed it. And I'd like to read more of it. But I don't quite know that it edges into 4 territory. So these might be 3s, which is still good for me. A 3 is... So I've joked a lot with my husband about how what I really need is a 7-point scale. Because I feel like I end up with things where I'm like, I know what a 5 is, and I'm fairly confident about what a 4 is. I definitely know what a 1 is, and I know what a 2 is. But with a 3, I usually end up with the middle being straight meh. Books I'm just like, okay, yeah, I'm done with that. I'm going to forget about it soon. Books that are, it was fine. It had one major problem, but probably not enough for me to, like, shuffle it into 2 territory. Like, I didn't dislike the whole thing. It was meh, but with a more like meh, as opposed to just meh. Does that make sense? And then I have high 3s, which aren't quite a 4, but are better than meh. So I feel like that's kind of where these are. They're not quite one that I'm like, oh, I really liked that, and I think everybody should read that. I would highly recommend it. They were good, so they're at least a 3, but I just don't know that they quite make it to being a 4. So for me, they would be a high 3, which would be like what, like a 6, like a 5. They'd be a 5 on a 7-point scale, with a 4 being that straight meh. They would be above that. They're not meh, but I just don't know. I don't know. And I know some people use half stars to try to get around this, but like, I don't have a difference between a 4.5 and a 4-star. I just don't see that. There's nothing I'd want to rate a half a star or a 1.5 star. If it's a 1 star, it's a 1 star. And I don't really think... So the only ones I would use would be 2.5 and 3.5 to make my 7-point scale. But again, that just makes it kind of... I don't feel like using 2 half stars makes it work, because then I am dividing everything up into 10 slots that I'm just not using most of them. So I don't know. Like I said, I might make a video about my preferred rating scale, but for now, I think these are 3s. It isn't one I want to pick up immediately, the next one, so that's why I'm thinking it might not be a 4. It might just be a 3, but a strong 3. A good 3 that I would recommend if I knew people who liked stories like Sailor Moon, if I knew people who liked historical stories, if I knew people who liked shoujo and were just looking for more shoujo. I'd recommend this to them. It was fun. I liked it. I don't know that it's an I really liked it, which for me is a 4. So, I don't know. 3 stars maybe? But a strongly recommended 3 stars. Alright, so that's 2.5 tonight, so let's see what's next.
A random number between 1 and 17 is 6.
6. 6. Oh, it's in the middle. Okay, Night Librarians. This is what I was thinking about reading after I read Mothkeeper anyway, because I was kind of in the mood. These are both kind of similar in that they are young adult graphic novels, I believe. Or at least graphic novels written for a younger audience. Young adult might not be these might be more middle grade. I'm not sure. I don't work in a bookstore or a library. I don't know how things are classified. But, yeah, let me see. What time is it? Ooh, it's a little late. I might not get all the way through this one tonight, which does mean I will have read less tonight than I read last night. Interesting. What did I read yesterday? Did I read 3 things yesterday? 3.5? I did, because I read the little endless storybooks, and those were really short. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that checks out. These have been not longer reads necessarily, but much more dense than what was in the little endless storybooks. So that makes sense that I probably wouldn't get through quite as much tonight. So I'll probably start this one. I don't know that I'll finish it, but I'll come back tomorrow either way and let you know how things are going. Hello again. It is tomorrow. What's today? It's the 29th of January, and I am back to continue reading. It's been 2 seconds for you, a whole day for me. So, yesterday I read most of The Night Librarian, and then I finished it this morning. It was really cute. It's clearly intended for a middle grade audience. The main characters are 10. My only fear with this one is that it references so much classic literature that I don't know that the target audience will be familiar with. Like, they're palling around with Alice from Alice in Wonderland and Jim Hawkins from Treasure Island, and while the kids in this book seem to have encyclopedic knowledge of classic literature, I just don't know that most kids will, unless they've watched a show like Wishbone or something that really goes into classic literature and introduces these characters. They might know Alice because they've seen the Disney movie. They'll know Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk, and then they might have heard of some of the others. They might have seen Muppet Treasure Island, so maybe they know that one. And then, like, they might kind of know who Dracula is. They might have heard that there's a monster called the Invisible Man, but I don't know at 10. I don't know. There's a lot of classic books mentioned. The Murder at Rue Morgue. I don't know what 10-year-olds know about the Murder at Rue Morgue. I don't know. The book tries to teach some, like, factoids about books and reading. It mentions that the Gutenberg Bible is the first mass-produced book, so it's very valuable, which they have one on display at the New York Public Library, which is where this is set. It is clearly a love letter to reading and the New York Public Library. It tells you that an epistolary novel is a novel written through letters and journal entries. My only fear with it is just that the target audience isn't going to connect with a lot of the literary references. I feel like there is care taken whenever a book is mentioned to, like, tell you a little blurb about it, so that in case you're unfamiliar with it, it does kind of try to tell you, oh, this is this book and what it does. But if it's just a bunch of books you've never heard of, I don't know if it's going to be as magical as if it's storybook characters you've heard about and already love. So for me, this really worked because I, if not have read a lot of these books, I'm very familiar with them through popular culture. Because I am an adult and I have had almost 40 years to absorb things. But at 10, I don't know. I really like the world building. I like the idea of the Night Librarians. The book starts out with this beautiful prologue about how books are, what does it say? Magic builds in books. And it talks about how if you have a very old book, and if you have a book surrounded by a lot of books, that the magic in those books builds, and that sometimes the characters in those books try to escape. And so the New York Public Library, because it does feature a lot of very old and a lot of books, is ripe for these magical happenings of things erupting from books. So they have night librarians who basically have to, like, air out the books by letting these characters out from time to time to just kind of release the magic and let them have a little time in our world, and then they go back to their book. But some care has to be taken to make sure you're not letting the wrong things out of books, because, example, if you had a war story and 2 tanks got out of the book, the library would be destroyed. So the night librarian has a big job of trying to make sure things aren't getting out that shouldn't be. And when our two main characters, who are Paige and Turner, they are twins, and Paige is spelled like a book page, not like you normally spell the name Paige, which I thought was kind of a little on the nose. And their last name is Reed, which at least was Reed, so you were like, oh, their name is Paige Reed and Turner Reed. But the two characters come across this night librarian because they have an old book that kind of is being surrounded by the other books, starts to act funny, and then they encounter the night librarian and find out that there's a lot of things going on in the library where characters who shouldn't be getting out are escaping from books. They're unsanctioned escapes. And so they're trying to figure out what's going on with that and how to stop them and how to track down these book characters. It's very clever. It's very cute. If you like middle grade works and you like books about books and libraries like I do, then you'll probably enjoy this one. I think I'm going to give it a 4. It wasn't my all-time favorite book. It is a middle grade book, so some of the lessons and the writing are a little on the nose. Some of the kids using slang terms like OBS and OMG felt a little high, fellow kids, because the author is 71. So a little of the slang that the kids are using does feel a little like trying very hard to be hip with the slang. It would have been a little bit better, I think, if they just had avoided it. Paige and Turner were decent characters. They had their own little arcs in the story, and it was clever in how it used the books and the different things in it. If you are someone who likes books and stories about books and the magic contained in books, I think you'll like this one. So yeah, I would recommend this one. 4 stars. It was good. So now I have to go back to the stack. I have 16 books in the stack.
A random number between 1 and 16 is 4.
4. Okay. 4 gives me Hilda. The Wilderness Stories. I picked this up. It may have been a gift. Did you give this to me?
Yeah, I think I got that one.
I think my husband gave this to me. He thinks he got it for me, so he probably got it for me. I love the show on Netflix. If you haven't watched Hilda, you really should. It's so cute. I want this right here. A deer fox. Oh my gosh. I want a deer fox. Deer fox is cutest thing in the entire universe. This special treasury edition contains the first 2 volumes of Hilda's adventures. It looks like this contains Hilda and the Troll and Hilda and the Midnight Giant, which I do believe I know what both of those stories are. My only complaint about this is the cover does have art from the Netflix series, but the art inside looks more like this here on the back. So there is a decent difference between the art stylings. I prefer the art from the show. It's just a little cuter and a little rounder and softer. It's just an art style I prefer a little bit, but I'm still excited to read these, where it came from, and kind of compare how the adaptation was made. But I'm excited to read this one. It should probably be quick because I already know the story, and I'll check in and let you know when I finished it. And I have just finished Hilda and the Troll and Hilda and the Midnight Giant. These are collected as the Wilderness Stories, and these are the stories that happen before Hilda moves into town. If you've watched the show, you'll know that Hilda does move into town. These are the stories that take place when she lives out in the wilderness. And Hilda is a explorer. She loves seeing new things and going out and having adventures. She's very spirited and very brave. It's very interesting to look at these 2 graphic novels and see how Hilda's design has changed. There's even notes in the back from the author that's like, oh, her eyes are bigger in the second one, and this is the only volume she has freckles in. Her proportions change from book to book, which I think is so interesting. And another reason why I probably would prefer the animation, just because it is more consistent. This is a lot like the show. There's, other than the art being fairly different, the stories felt very familiar. It's been a while since I watched the show. It's been probably 3 or 4 years since I watched the show. So it's been a bit. I really like Hilda as a character. She says things that are just so amusing, like, there's no point in dying if nobody knows how it happened. And the day was very traumatic, but such as to be expected in the life of an adventurer. The world building is just so interesting with these very memorable characters. This is the Woodman, and then these are the Wafts, which are so cute. The Wafts are great. And just, it's all very whimsical and fun. The world just feels like a place you'd want to explore. So you really relate to Hilda. Like, you want to learn more about this world too. The first story is about a troll, and Hilda encountering this troll and the rules around trolls. And then the second is about Hilda encountering both the elves that live around her house and this mysterious giant that is bigger than any she's ever heard of before. I might try to read this with my daughter soon. I think my daughter would like these. And then we can watch the show and she'll like that too. There's also, I found out from the back, there are several novels. There are, I think, 4 other graphic novels. And I think it said 6 different novels in the series. Even though I still think I slightly prefer the animation, I did really enjoy the comic and it's exploring it in this format. There's just a lot of fun ideas in this. There's some great extra material in the back with concept sketches and excerpts from books that Hilda's reading that just make for a really fun reading experience. So I really liked this one. I feel like if I hadn't seen the show, this would definitely be a 5. Because I just love everything about this world. So I think this is going to be a 5. Yeah, I really love this. I love the characters. I think this one's a 5. It's solid. And it's good. All right, so let's see what our next read is.
A random number between 1 and 15 is 3.
3. Well, 3 means that it's one of my Tea Dragon Society books because I know they're at the bottom of the pile. So I guess I'm reading the 3 Tea Dragon Society books next. So let me pull those out. So I have Tea Dragon Society, Tea Dragon Festival, and Tea Dragon Tapestry. And these are all also by Kay O'Neill. I added these books to the stack after I read Mothkeeper. I also added Hilda to the stack then because when they were in the same place on my shelf because they're a little oversized. So when I pulled these out, I saw Hilda and I was like, oh, Hilda would also be a fun one to add to the stack to read right now. So I added that one to the stack. So now it looks like I'm reading these. And they get quite a bit longer. I hadn't realized how short the first one is compared to the later volumes of the series. But they do get quite a bit longer. From what I remember, this story is very plot light. It's a lot more vibes and cuteness than it is being concerned with some heavy plot. That may change in the later volumes. I can't quite remember. But I will give these a read. And I will let you know when I come back. It's update time. I have finished the Tea Dragon Society, the Tea Dragon Festival, and the Tea Dragon Tapestry. And I loved these. These were so nice. I was wrong. I did not read the second one. I had only read the first one. But I love tea and I love dragons, so this was an easy buy to get all 3. Plus, I feel like I remember at one point seeing a smaller version of these, and I was worried if I didn't buy, I think, the third one in the big size, I wouldn't be able to find the matching one. So I picked up the third one even though I hadn't read the second one at some point. But I'm so glad I've read them now, and I'll probably reread these quite a bit. They were very sweet. Like I said from before, the first one is very character heavy. It doesn't have a strong plot. You're following Greta and Min and the other people in their village through basically a year. And there isn't a bad guy, there isn't a big conflict. You're just watching these 2 girls as they grow and learn things and get closer to each other and learn about caring for tea dragons, which is an art that is seemingly fading out in the world, which makes no sense. I want dragons. I want tea dragons. The dragons are apparently very difficult to care for, which is one reason why why the art is dying out and people aren't as willing to take care of them. But they're too cute. I don't care. I would care for a tea dragon. So this one is very short. It's just a year with these characters. The people teaching them, Well, they're here on the back. So we have Greta and Min, and then we have Eric and Hesse. What is Hesse's actual name? Hesekiel, I think is how I'm supposed to say it. So you have Eric and Hesekiel, have Jasmine and Roybos. And then Min is caring for Chamomile. And by the end, we see a new tea dragon as well. I also love that in the very back, it has these pictures of other tea dragons who aren't in this story. And I want a peppermint tea dragon more than anything in the world. So then the second book, it does say on the front that it's a companion story, and it takes place as kind of a prequel to the first one. This is when Eric and Hesekiel are young adventurers, and it follows the town Eric is from and some of Eric's extended family. I believe his mother and then his siblings' children. And then we get a character who is an actual dragon, not a tea dragon, but a dragon. They are different. But there are tea dragons at this one. This one, the focus was a lot less on the tea dragons. They were there and they were important, but they were still kind of background. It was a lot more about the characters. This one was about home and belonging and finding your place. And that was sweet. I liked that. It, again, was very character focused. There was no big conflict. It was very cozy. I wasn't expecting this to be a prequel, so I was almost disappointed at first when I read it and realized we weren't continuing the story of the characters. But it being a prequel was also nice, seeing more of the relationship between some of these characters. And then the third one takes place a year after Tea Dragon Society, and we're back to following Greta and Min, and kind of all the characters from the previous two books show up in this book. All of the main characters show back up. And we're back to following these two, and a year later picking up with their stories. And this one dealt very heavily with discovering who you are and what makes you you. There was touches of that in the second one as well. But this one focuses a lot on Min. She had lost her memories, and she doesn't really know where she fits anymore. And the one thing I really liked about this one, the tapestry that they're talking about, she has a dream at one point in the book, and without spoiling too much, the idea is presented that, because again, this is cozy. Spoilers are kind of weird for these things. But she is introduced, the concept is introduced that not that bad things in life happen for a reason, but that all of the bad things that happen are a part of you just the way the good things are. That they're all part of your tapestry. And that no matter what things have happened, you're already whole. You haven't lost any part of yourself. And a lot of this deals with grief, feeling like losing yourself, as well as Ginseng, this adorable little baby dragon. This adorable little dragon has lost its owner, and a year later is still struggling with grieving. So it talked a lot about grief and about how to help people who are grieving without forcing them to get over it, and knowing that you can't fix them or make them happy. You just have to be there for them when they're ready. And that was very sweet. This whole series is like a warm hug. The art is soft and beautiful. Here's chamomile and ginseng in a basket. Here's ginseng wearing a little scarf. I mean, how can you not love this art? So, the art is just gorgeous. There's great representation in these stories. There's all kinds of body types. You've got fantasy races going on, but you've got a variety of skin tones. You've got disability rep. You've got queer rep. It's very inclusive and very diverse. And I think that's really important, especially for books that are aimed at a young audience. This one especially this one and the first one both feel that kind of coming of age, passing the torch of skills and knowledge. And I think young readers would really enjoy these. And I think it's really important to have that kind of inclusion in stories like this so that everyone feels seen and that you see a variety of people in your books. That's so important. And these are great. I really like Kay O'Neill's work. And I'm probably going to be picking up more of their older stuff because everything I read from the 4 books I've read from them now have just made me so happy. And there's a number that I know I don't have and haven't read. So I'll probably be looking for those because I'm impressed. And everything about these makes me smile. This one was especially going to be a winner since I love tea and dragons. This was just there wasn't much of a chance I was going to hate it, but it could have been very meh, and it wasn't. I think all 3 of these are 5 stars. I would recommend them widely, and I will probably read them again. So glad I finally got around to these. Glad this silly little challenge got me to sit down and finally finish this. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm really happy I read these. That means I've read 4 books tonight. It's pretty late, so I don't know that I'm going to read another one tonight. But I think I'm going to go ahead and pick my next book just so I have it. So I'll maybe read a little bit of it and then maybe pick it up in the morning, or more likely pick it up tomorrow night. So let's see what it is. I have much less books now.
A random number between 1 and 12 is 6.
6. Ah! Cat Gamer Volume 6. Hooray! More cozy. So this is the latest volume, I think, of Cat Gamer. I've read all the rest. And I love Cat Gamer. If you like video games and cats, there's no reason you shouldn't be reading this. I expect this to be more of the same cute goodness. So yeah, I'll probably start this. The chapters in this are fairly one and done, so I can read a chapter or 2 and go to bed and pick it up tomorrow without really being interrupted. So sorry for the waving of books. I talk with my hands and I cannot be stopped. So if I have a book, I'm gonna play with it. I hope it's not too distracting. Let me know if it's a horrible nuisance and I need to work on that. Also, sorry this vlog is going to be incredibly boring. I realize that all this vlog is going to end up being for anyone who's not me is, hey, I'm going to read this book. Hey, I finished this book. Here's what it's about. Let's read the next book. Here's the next book. Hey, I finished that book. With graphic novels, it really is tough because there's nothing I can really talk about in between. It's silly to stop in the middle and tell you my thoughts when it's so short. And I'm not really going anywhere or doing anything. I'm a little bit of a shut-in and I'm very boring, so I'm sorry. This is going to be the world's most boring vlog. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do about it. How do people do this? Are people just more interesting than me? I don't know. So I guess it's also not super interesting when I sit in the same spot the whole time, but hey, I'm still learning vlogs. I'm sorry, you get to watch me do my learning process, but we're learning in real time here. But hey, I'm really excited. I'm over double digits for the month of January, and I could stop and just be like, yeah, I'm done, but I'm doing so well, and I'm getting so much read, and I feel so accomplished, and that's what I wanted from this. It wasn't necessarily about the number, because numbers are just numbers. You heard it here first, folks. Numbers are just numbers. Like, I don't recommend speed running through books to hit an arbitrary reading goal. I'm doing this because I'm reading short little graphic things I can read quickly because they don't take long to read, not because I'm rushing through them. And I don't recommend rushing through to hit an arbitrary goal or to make it seem like you've read more. But reading little things like this really does help my confidence. It makes me feel like, hey, I haven't read 2 books this month. I've read over 10. And that feels so good. Like, that feels great. And yeah, they're not all textbooks. They're not all books with text. They're not all only textbooks. I don't know what I'm going to call non-graphic novels. I feel like just calling them novels is silly because it's not just novels, it's short story collections and nonfiction too, and I don't have a word for that. We'll work on that. It's not all novels, but books are books to me, and I love comic books, I love manga. I have tons of these, and I want to read them. Hello, hello. It is January 30th. We are nearing the end of the month and the end of this speed run to try to get through as many books as I can before the end of the month. And you know how yesterday I said I was going to start Cat Gamer and then go to bed? Yeah, that didn't happen. I read the whole thing. This always happens. Reading late at night is dangerous for me But the chapters in this are so short and they're so quick and punchy, and it's just really cute and feel good that I read the whole thing. So I'm not sorry. I enjoyed it. It was great. I love these silly cats. I love how there's always the chapter of like the dilemma and the thing that's going on with the cats. And then afterward, there's always like a bonus page of what the cats are thinking during all this nonsense. And it's always just so amusing and so wholesome. This is just a great series. I love it. It's wonderful. So when I finished this, I went ahead and rolled the random number generator again. And I was starting to wonder, because it hadn't yet, I was like, oh, will it ever pick the first or the last number? Or does it think I want a number between those two numbers? Is it being weirdly like computer literal and it's not understanding what I really mean? And then it picked the highest number. It picked number 11, which was one of my novellas on the list, which is Thornhedge by T. Kingfisher. This is a book I got for one of my library summer reading programs last summer. This was one of my prizes for completing so much reading at one of the libraries. And it's a shorty. It's a short little book. It's almost exactly 100 pages, I think, if you take out the acknowledgement section. I think it's, let me see. It's 111 pages if you take out the acknowledgements. I should be able to get through this in a couple hours. I don't know much about this except that I know it seems to be a Sleeping Beauty retelling. I tend to like fairy tale retellings, so I am looking forward to this. T. Kingfisher is a name I keep seeing. I haven't read anything that they've written, I don't think. No, I don't think I've read anything from her, but I keep seeing her books on all the booktubers I love. And I know you read Nettle and Bone, right?
Yes.
Did you like Nettle and Bone?
I liked it all right.
You liked it all right?
Yeah.
You would read more from the author?
Yeah. It wasn't anything that would put me off from the author.
So yeah, I'm going to try to make my way through this, which means I probably won't read 5 books today. I read 5 and finished another one in the morning yesterday. So yesterday I got a ton of books read. I don't even know what I'm at in terms of how many books I've read in this challenge at the moment. I don't know. I don't remember anymore. I just know it's more than 10. I know we're at more than 10 total for the month, which is exciting. So I'm going to sit down and go through this. I might check in when I'm about halfway through just to give you something more than final thoughts, give you some middle thoughts on something to make this a little more lively. Oh, look, it matches my shirt. We're going TARDIS blue over here. I'll check in when I have some of this read and I have something to tell you. And for me, it'll be a while. For you, it'll be real soon. Okay, bye. So I just got to page 50 of Thornhedge and thought I would do a little update. I've just finished chapter 4. And I really like the way this is written. I really like the language in the book. There's a lot of really interesting moments in the way it's written. I think some of my favorites are, I like that Toadling, our main character, there's a line near the beginning that says, mostly she was fretful and often tired. And I mean, mood. Toadling is the guardian of our sleeping princess. And at the beginning of the story, we see her watching time pass and hoping that people will forget about her. And she talks about how no one should remember them, but of course people are telling stories and she doesn't know how to fight a story. And I thought there's something really interesting in that, being in a story. This idea of not knowing how to fight the power of a story, that once it's written down, that once people are telling it to each other, that it gets a life of its own that outlives the people it's about by hundreds of years is very interesting. We learn a little bit about Toadling. We see Toadling as she's watching, and we start to learn more about her and her past. And I thought that was really interesting. The book doesn't start with that. It starts with kind of in our present and a knight coming to the to the hedge, to the thorn hedge, and her interactions with him, trying to dissuade him from going farther. And then we start getting intermingled with that. We get stuff about where Toadling came from and how she was raised and how she was schooled and her place kind of in this world that really changes things. Like, I was not expecting her to have the background that she had. I was not expecting her to have come from where she came from. It's all very interesting and puts a very unique spin on the traditional tale of a Sleeping Beauty. It changes just enough that it feels like a brand new story while still having its roots in this very classic story. It completely changes the relationship between the characters and different things about them. So everything feels fresh and you're not sure what could happen or what should happen. And I really like that in a fairy tale retelling where it has the bones of the original and you can see where the original is, but it's done enough with it to change it to where it feels like a wholly original story. It's so well done here. So I'm really enjoying it. I really love the language. There's been some really pretty lines, like there was a line about like it had been too long since she had used words, and so she didn't know how to make them do what she wanted. And there's a part where she's remembering words from the past, but when she's saying them now, they're in a different language because she can speak all languages because of fairy magic. And it talks about how the words of her heart and the words of her lips are different because as she's thinking through what she wants to say, and it's coming through her, the words are completely different than what she remembers as she tries to make it comprehensible in the modern day. And I find that so interesting. And I love the way it's written. I love the language. I love the style. I'm really enjoying this. It's so short and I'm so worried that horrible things are going to happen, but I'm interested in seeing where it goes. So I'm gonna keep reading. Hello. I have just finished Thornhedge, and I really liked it. I'm not sure if it's a 4 or a 5 yet, but honestly, I think I'm leaning toward a 5. Like, I really liked this story. It's very simple. There's not a lot to it. It's only 100 pages. It doesn't have a lot of twists and turns or too complicated of a narrative, but I really liked the characters. I adored the writing. I'm definitely going to find more T. Kingfisher because I love her style. But I just really liked this. I thought it used the Sleeping Beauty story well. It made some interesting changes. I liked Toadling so much. She was such an interesting character. And the night she is talking to Halim was an interesting fill-in for like the heroic prince who's come to save the maiden. I liked some of their conversations. I liked him with her. It was just very endearing and very sweet. And like I said, I'm going to have to look for more T. Kingfisher. I'm so happy that I got this book for free from my summer reading. I know there are some other fairy tale retellings that I've looked at in the store that are novellas. A Spindle Splintered. Yeah, it's also 119 pages. It's another novella that's in a series. And I might have to pick those up because I really enjoyed this one. And like I said, I'm definitely picking up more T. Kingfisher because I loved her writing. There were so many lines in this that I was reading out loud to my husband because I just liked them so much. I should have been keeping a journal of the lines I liked. The writing in this was really good. I like the way she turns a phrase. I like the whimsicalness of the way things were written. I like fairy tales when you have this sort of limited narrator, but the narrator is clearly somewhat snarking. Like the narrator itself isn't a character in the book, but is fairly snarky. Like at one point, I don't remember exactly the context, but Toadling is asking, she's like, oh, she wonders if a god out there would do something. Like she asked the gods to do this, and the next line is like, apparently the gods had something better to do because it didn't happen. And I just really like that, like, little bit of snark from a narrator. It's something I've tried to do in my own writing because I just love it so much, and so I love seeing it done masterfully in a book, and this was great. So yeah, only one book tonight. I'm probably going to start something else because I'm not quite ready for bed, but that did take a good while to read, not like my other ones that are done in 30-40 minutes. This did take a couple hours to get through. I want to look at more novellas because they do give you that accomplishment of having something done, and I just think it's such an interesting format to have a shorter story, more condensed, more punchy, not a lot of wasted words, but much longer than a short story. Novellas are just so interesting to me, and it's not something I've ever tried to write, but maybe I should. Maybe this is a format that would be good for me. I don't know. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of novellas out there I want to check out. The Murderbot series, I think, fall under their classification. The Wayward Children series. The Singing Hills cycle. The one from Becky Chambers about the monk. What is that? That's the Psalm of Wild Things. I think that's a novella. So yeah, there's this whole list of novellas I want to read. And I feel like when I'm feeling in a reading slump and reading a big old book feels hard, this is the kind of thing that maybe I can pick up and be through it and be done, and that helps. Because like my last book, the last book with text that I read, I didn't like very much. I ended up giving it 2 stars, and it was just like, what do I pick up next? I don't want to dislike what I read, and reading a lot of books is a time commitment. Like it takes time to read them. But a novella felt a lot less intimidating, which is why I was doing this at the end of the month, instead of trying to power through one last novel, one last 400 page novel. I thought I'd do this to get other things read, and nothing that was going to take me too long, so that even if I didn't like something, and I was pretty sure I was going to like everything in these stacks, I stacked the deck in my favor. I picked stuff that I had a very strong feeling I would like. So, yeah, I'm going to have to check out more novellas. I just wish they weren't so expensive. Looking at this one, this is $20. And that's, for this big of a book, it's tiny. It's 100 pages. That's like the price I expect to pay for like a 350, 400 page book. And I'm sure with bookbinding and everything, there's not much difference between a hardcover small book and a hardcover big book. But I've also been burned by novellas in the past. I read Nothing But Blackened Teeth a few years ago for Halloween, and whew, that book was awful. I hated that book. I think I gave that book 1 star, and I don't give 1 stars often, but that book was just awful. And I remember I was so mad at that book because I specifically picked it right after it came out to read on Halloween because my daughter was still too young to go trick-or-treating. So it was easy to sit inside and just pick up a book and read it in the evening. And I think it was the last year before we went trick-or-treating with her. And I read it and was just so disappointed, and I've been looking forward to it so much. I'd hyped myself up so badly for that book because the cover was gorgeous and it involved Japanese ghosts. I love books set in Japan, and it was just a mess. I'll probably do a whole rant about that book later because it is one of the few books I've given 1 star to. So I have been burned by novellas in the past. It's not that all novellas I think will be great, but they are at least less of a time commitment. So when you read a bad one, it's easier to just bounce back from it and be like, well, I didn't have a very good time, but it's over. I could go to the next one. So yeah, I think this is something I might pick up more of. I definitely want to pick up more T. Kingfisher. I think her other books that I'm aware of, The House with Good Bones and Nettle and Bone, are both... Nettle and Bone and The House with Good Bones? Yeah. And then What Moves the Dead. I don't know about What Moves the Dead. Oh, it's that cover. Oh, that cover's creepy. But T. Kingfisher is going to be on my radar because I really liked the writing of this and I want to check out more. Let's see what my next book's going to be. I think I have 10 left in the stack.
A random number between 1 and 10 is 6.
6. It likes to pick 6. Kitaro. Kitaro meets Neuraligion. So I'm going to start this. This is another one that I think will be easy to read part of. The stories are going to be fairly, I think, standalone. Kitaro is a demon boy who is friends with humans and wants to stop yokai from messing with people, basically. Hello friends, it is now February 8th and it's been a minute. I have been putting off wrapping up this February vlog. So quick update, I did not finish my Kitaro volume. I did start it, I read some of it, and then I just got busy and I started reading fan fiction. So I read a lot of fan fiction the last day of the month at the beginning of this month, which I can't put on my Goodreads, but is just as exciting and fulfilling a lot of the time. So I was enjoying myself rereading some old favorites, discovered a new favorite from an author I really like, and then even reread some of my own fan fiction that I didn't hate, which is always a good feeling. So I didn't get any more progress on this, but I should be able to finish it up probably in the near future. I'll get it wrapped up. I'm really happy that I did my big push at the end of the month, and I think it's something I might do if I know I'm going to have some time and I'm in between longer books. I might try to throw that in and just read some quick short stuff. It made me feel very accomplished, which was the whole goal, and it was a good way to start off the year. I feel much better about my January progress, and hopefully I won't have to like trick myself, psych myself up into doing this much progress in reading. But you know, if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. Sometimes you gotta play mind games with yourself to get the progress you want, right? So that's it for me. Thank you so much for joining me. Like the video if you did. Subscribe to tell YouTube you want to see more of me for some reason, and leave a comment down below if you've read any of these books or have any books to recommend to me. I love hearing from you. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapter. Bye. I've yapped too long. It's time to stop.